So we're holding in Tractate Menachot, Daf Ayin Bet, page 72, A1, for Sunday, the 22nd of the 12th day of Cheshvan, Yud Bet Mar Cheshvan. October 21st today, October 21st, 2018. Sover lo kavose bechad. Rav Meir agrees with Rabbi Akiva concerning one matter: reaping grain for a person before it reaches a third of its growth. He agrees with Rabbi Akiva. Ufoli galei bechado, but disputes him regarding another matter: reaping grain for a person after it reaches a third of its growth. Even according to the view of Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Meir's ruling was stated in accordance with the reasoning of Rabbi Akiva. Koitzrin mipnei anetiros. The Mishnah stated koitzrin mipnei anetiros umipnei beis ha'ovel umipnei beis hamidrash. So we may harvest new grain before harvesting the own because of saplings, because of place of mourning, and because of the Beis HaMikdash. We needed the space for the study hall. My time, what is the reason to permit these harvestings? It is because the merciful one, in describing the Omer as the first of the harvest, stated the first of your harvest, which implies veloy ketzir mitzvah, but not the first of a harvest of a mitzvah. In the cases of the Mishnah, the reapings are performed for the purpose of a mitzvah. Therefore, these ripenings, these harvestings, may precede the harvest of the Omer. One may not make the stalks of grain bundle, rather one leaves them untied. My timer, the chamad efshar lo terchinan. What's the reasoning? It is that as much as possible we do not busy ourselves with chodesh produce, lest we transgress. Too much engagement with it can lead to transgression. Mitzvah soimer lo min hakoma. The commandment of the Omer requires to bring it from a standing crop. However, if the court did not find unharvested grain, let it bring the offering from previously cut sheaves. The Mishnah goes on to list the two other Omer requirements that although preferred, are not essential to the validity of the offering. Namely, that the kernels be moist and that the grain be harvested on the night of the 16th of Nisan. The Gemara now cites a brisa that teaches the scriptural source of these three rulings. Tanu Rabbanon, our rabbis have taught in a brisa when the pasuk states and then repeats, Ve'im takriv minchas bikurim, when you bring a mincha offering of the first grain. Ma Talmud lema. What is the teaching? Why does it repeat this phrase? Lefi shemitzvah so'imer lovi min hakoma. It does so because the commandment of the Omer requires them to bring it from a standing crop. So Vayikro Chav Gimel and Vayikro Beis, Leviticus 23:10 and Leviticus 2:14, it's seemingly redundant. It does so because the commandment of the Omer requires them to bring it from a standing crop. From where do we know that if the court did not find standing grain, it may bring the offering from previously cut sheaves? Talmud leimar takriv. The Torah states, you shall bring. This teaches that harvesting from a standing crop is not essential to the validity of the Omer offering. Davar acher, another thing, takriv, the verse repeats the phrase, you shall bring, lefi shemitzvah lehavi min halach. It's a mitzvah because the commandment of the Omer requires to bring it from moist, fresh kernels. Umenayin shim lo imotzo min halach, yovi min hayovesh. From where do we know that if the court does not find moist grain, it may bring the offering from dried out grain? Talmud loymar, the Torah therefore states, takriv, you shall bring. This teaches that moist kernels are not essential to the offering. Davar acher, another thing, takriv, the pasuk repeats the phrase, you shall bring, lefi shemitzvosoi likzer balaylo, because the commandment of the Omer requires them to harvest it on the night of the 16th of Nisan. Menayin shim niktzar b'hem kosher. How do we know that if it was harvested during the day, it's still kosher? Talmud loymar, takrib. The Torah therefore states, you shall bring. This teaches that harvesting the Omer on the night of the 16th is not essential to the validity of the Omer. V'deiches Shabbos, and from where do we know that the Omer overrides the Shabbos? Talmud loymar, the Torah therefore states, takriv, you shall bring. The Weiser elucidates the exposition, takriv kolshu, you shall bring whatever it is, whether standing grain or harvested grain. Takriv mikol mokim, from any place, even if it is distant from Yerushalayim. Takriv afilu b'Shabbos, you shall bring, and even on the Shabbos. Takriv afilu b'Tumah, you shall bring, and even in a state of impurity.
Rabbi, they can override the Shabbos to harvest the grain, but they can also carry to the Yerushalayim?
Of course, yeah.
Everything that they are forbidden Shabbos, they can do?
All the melachot, all the works that was involved in the Omer, they were allowed to do on Shabbat. If you want to see it in number 15, look at 15. It says, burning a chometz would ordinarily be forbidden on the Shabbat. Likewise, an individual who is contaminated with tumah is forbidden to bring a sacrificial offering. The Baita tells us that by repeating the phrase, you shall bring, right? Takriv, right? You shall bring. The Torah indicates that no matter what the circumstances, you must bring the Omer offering. Even if the 16th of Nisan falls on Shabbat, or if it becomes necessary to bring the offering in a state of tumah. It is so brought. Note that our Baisa dispute Baita cited on 72b, which derives these permits from a different source, but regardless, it's permitted. If you're learning it from this source or that source, it's permitted. Niktzar bayom kosher, however, if the Omer was harvested on the day, on the 16th, it is valid. Vatenan, the Gemara cites that seems to contradict ours. The Gemara cites a Mishnah that seems to contradict ours. Vatenan, we learned in the Mishnah Kol alayla kosher liktiras omer, the entire night is valid for the reaping of the omer, ulaktir chalovim ve'evorim, and for the burning of the sacrificial fats and limbs. You can do it the whole night. Zakla, this is the general rule. Dover shemitzvosei bayoim, kosher kol hayom. Anything that the mitzvah is performed by day, the mitzvah to do it throughout the day, you can do it the whole day. Dover shemitzvosei balayla, kosher kol halayla. If the mitzvah must be performed at night, you're allowed to do it the whole night. By presenting the cases of night and day as parallel teachings, ketoni laylo dumya deyoim, the Mishnah in effect states that the law of night mitzvahs is similar to that of day mitzvahs. Ma deyom b'layla loy, just as the mitzvahs of the day may not be performed at night, avdel layla bayom nami loy, so too may the mitzvahs of the night not be performed by day. It follows that the harvesting of the Omer, which is one of the mitzvahs the Mishnah classifies as of the night may not be performed by day. Our Mishnah, however, states that if the Omer was not harvested on the night of the 16th, it may be harvested on the following day. Seemingly, the two Mishnahs contradict one another. You have to decide either by day or by night. Omar Rabbo lo yikashyo. There's no difficulty. Ho Rabbi, the Mishnah, our Mishnah, is in accord with the view of Rabbi, who permits the Omer to be harvested on the day of the 16th. Rabbi Lozo Rabbi Shimon. This other Mishnah is in accord with the view of Rabbi Lozo, the son of Rabbi Shimon, who does not permit the Omer to be harvested on the day of the 16th. A Kohen was standing and offering the Omer Mincha on the day of Nisan, the 16th. V'nitmes, and it became Tomeh. Im yesh acheres, if you have another one. Omer loy, he is told, Hovei acheres tachteo, bring another one instead. V'im lav, however, there is no other barley to be that they ready. Omer loy have pikeach u'shesoik. Be wise and remain silent. He then offers up the Tomeh offering. Divrei Rabbi. These are the words of Rabbi. Rabbi Lozo Rabbi Shimon Eimer. Rabbi Lozo, the son of Rabbi Shimon, says, Bein kach uvein kach. Either way, even if there remains barley that can be harvested, Omer loy have pikeach u'shesoik. Be wise and remain silent. Shekol ha'emer sheniktzar sheloi kemitzvosoi pasul. For the prescribed time of harvest is on the night of the 16th, and any Omer offering that is not harvested in its prescribed manner is invalid. Since there can be no replacement, we use the Tomeh offering. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Lozo Rabbi Shimon B'Shidus Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Shalom Yom. Rabbi Lozo, the son of Rabbi Shimon, stated his ruling in accordance with the reasoning of Rabbi Akiva, teacher of Rabbi Lozo, teacher of Rabbi Shimon, right? Rabbi Shimon's teacher was Rabbi Akiva. The Tenan, we have learned in the Mishnah, Klol Omar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva stated a general rule, Kol melocho she'efshar lo la'asos erev Shabbos. Any labor that can be performed on the day before the Shabbos, Eina doicho es ha-Shabbos, does not override the Shabbos prohibition. Rabbi Lodo, the son of Rabbi Shimon, follows this ruling. The second ruling upon which Rabbi Lozo, the son of Rabbi Shimon, bases his reasoning. V'sovar lo ke Rabbi Shmuel, the Omar kesir soimer mitzvah. And also Rabbi Lozo, the son of Rabbi Shimon, holds like Rabbi Shmuel, who said that since the reaping of the Omer is a mitzvah, it overrides the Shabbos, that not. Rabbi Shmuel oimer machor ish reshus av kotzer reshus. Yotza ketzir ha'omer shehi mitzvah. Rabbi Shmuel says that just as the plowing prohibited by this verse is strictly discretionary, in other words, if you look at 33, it says, there is no instance in which the Torah obligates a person to perform an act of plowing. Perforce, when the verse prohibits plowing on the Shabbat, it refers to a discretionary act. Av kotzi reshus, so too is the reaping prohibited by the verse discretionary. It's an optional, discretionary. An obligatory act of reaping, however, would be permitted on the Shabbat. This teaches that the reaping of the Omer, which is an obligatory act, is excluded from the prohibition. We see that according to Rabbi Shmuel, the Omer may be harvested on the Shabbat. In the event the 16th of Nisan falls on Shabbat. The mitzvah of harvesting the Omer overrides the prohibition against harvesting of against harvesting on the Shabbat, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, follows Rabbi Shmuel's view. The Gemara now explains Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon's reasoning. Now, if it will enter your mind that an Omer offering that is not harvested in its prescribed manner is valid, why does the reaping of the Omer override the prohibition against harvesting on the Shabbos? If being harvested on the night of the 16th is not essential to the offering, then instead of harvesting the Omer on the Shabbat, Niktzere me'erev Shabbat, let it be harvested on the day before the Shabbat. Since the harvesting of the Omer does in fact override the Shabbos, we may learn from this that if the Omer was harvested in its prescribed manner, it is harvested before or after the night of the 16th, it is not valid. This is the basis of the ruling of Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Lav Talmidei de Rabbi Shimon, but is Rabbi not a disciple of Rabbi Shimon? V'atanyo, it is taught in the Baita, Omar Rabbi Kshayinu Lemeidin Torah etzel Rabbi Shimon b'Tekoa. When we were studying Torah under Rabbi Shimon in Tekoa, till today there's a place, I think it's past Yerushalayim, that's called Tekoa. Hayinu malin lo shemen v'alunutis mechotzer lagag. We would carry oil and towels for him from courtyard to roof, umigag lekarpef, and from roof to karpef, umikarpef lekarpef acher, and from one karpef to another one, ad shanu magin lamayon shanu rochatzin boy, until we would reach the spring in which we would bathe. Look at 37. It is forbidden on Shabbos to carry object through the public domain. So, as not to transgress this prohibition, Rabbi Shimon's students would carry his bath items to the spring, were forced to wend their way through a series of private domains. Some maintains that this constitutes a violation of the rabbinic decree that prohibits carrying between separate private domains unless they are joined with an eruv. However, Rabbi Shimon rules that adjoining roofs, courtyards, and karpefus, which is type of balconies, are as a single private domain with respect to objects that were located with their bounds at the onset of Shabbos. According to Rabbi Shimon, one is permitted to carry these objects between such different private domains without benefit of an eruv. The bottom line is, we see that Rabbi was a student of Rabbi Shimon. From this Baita, we see that Rabbi was a disciple of Rabbi Shimon. Since Rabbi Shimon was himself a disciple of Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi must perforce accord with the view of Rabbi Akiva that if a particular action can be performed before the Shabbos, it does not override the Shabbos prohibition. Yet although Rabbi rules that the requirement to harvest on the 16th at night is not essential to the validity of the offering, he still rules that harvest of the Omer overrides the Shabbos. But if the requirement is not essential, the harvesting should not override the Shabbos, for it can be performed prior to the Shabbos. You understand the concept? He says if you can do it before, if it's not essential, then why should you do it on Shabbos? Do it before Shabbos. Why do you have to violate the Shabbos?
16 is Shabbos and at night, do before.
Do on the 15th.
Yeah. Why you have to do it at night? Why you have to disagree Shabbos?
Exactly. So what do we see from it? That it probably is essential. If it's essential, then you should override the Shabbos.
Do it at night.
It's essential to do it at night of the 16th.
We just studied that night and day is the same.
No. We studied that if you're allowed to do it during the day, you're allowed to do it during the whole day.
Oh yeah.
If you have to do it at night, you need to do it the whole night. Sovala keidach de Rabbi Shimon, the Tanya Omar Rabbi Shimon. Come and see how beloved is a mitzvah performed in its proper time. A lot of people today, if the bris is not happening on the 8th, we'll do it on the 20 days, 15 days. They see that there is a great importance to mitzvah b'shato. Perform mitzvah in its proper time. Sacrificial burning of the fats and limbs of these offering is valid all the night and could very well be postponed until nightfall when the Shabbos ends. Yet we do not postpone their burning until nightfall. Rather, since it is preferable to burn these parts by day, we override the Shabbos restrictions to do so because of the great value of a mitzvah performed in its proper time. Likewise, with regard to the Omer offering, although it could be harvested before the Shabbos, we harvested on the Shabbos itself in order to perform this mitzvah in its proper time. It emerges that although Rabbi is a disciple of Rabbi Shimon, he can still allow the harvesting of the Omer to override the Shabbos. And to imagine that Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, did not learn this teaching from Rabbi Shimon. Of course he did. Nevertheless, he ruled that if the Omer can be harvested before the Shabbos, its harvest cannot override the Shabbos. He does not regard the permit to burn sacrificial fats on the Shabbos as a source to permit harvesting the Omer of the Shabbos. Elashani also, rather, it is different there in the case of the sacrificial fats. Shari dochaso shechito the Shabbos. For in that case, the slaughter of the offerings has already overridden the Shabbos. So the Shabbos has already been overridden once for the sake of this offering. It can be overridden again, even for the relatively minor benefit of burning the offerings at the proper time. In the case of the Omer, however, since the Shabbos was not previously overridden, we do not now override it for the minor benefit of harvesting the Omer at the proper time. So too, according to Rebbe, the sacrificial burning overrides the Shabbos only because the slaughter of the offering has already overridden the Shabbos. In the case of the Omer, however, where the Shabbos was not previously overridden, we may not override it for the minor benefit of performing the mitzvah in its proper time. Accordingly, Rebbe cannot derive the law of the Omer from the law of the sacrificial fats. Rather, Rebbe holds that harvesting of the Omer does not override the Shabbos. We have learned in the Mishnah, but the sages says, Echot Shabbos ve'echot Chol. Whether on the Shabbos or weekday, the Omer was brought from 3 seahs. Clearly, the harvesting of the Omer does override the Shabbos. So in number 4, they would cut enough barley to produce 3 seahs of flour, which would sift repeatedly until just 1 isoron of the finest flour remained. The loike Rabbi, this ruling is not in accordance with the view of Rabbi. But the sages say, Echot Shabbos ve'echot Chol bishloisho. It was reaped by 3 people. Whether it was Shabbos or weekday, 3 peoples were involved in the reaping of the harvest. B'sholish kupos, who put it into 3 baskets. Uv'sholish magolos, and used 3 sickles. Here again we see that harvesting the Omer overrides the Shabbos. The Gemara again answers, the loi kerabi. This ruling is not in accordance with the view of Rabbi. The Gemara asks from another Mishnah, Uve Shabbos, when the reaping takes place on the Shabbos, Yemar loem, the reaper then asks them, Shabbos zu, this Shabbos? And they answer yes. This again demonstrates that the harvesting of the Omer overrides the Shabbos. The Loi Karabi, this ruling is not in accordance with the view of Rabbi. The Gemara raises yet another challenge, this one based on the teaching of our Mishnah, which states, Nikzar bayom kosher, the Omer was harvested on the day of the 16th. it is valid. V'doiches HaShabbos, and it, the Omer, overrides the Shabbos. Man shomat leid Omer niktzah b'hem kosher. Now, who have you heard has said that if the Omer was harvested on the day of the 16th, it is valid? Rabbi. V'ketoni, yet the Mishnah teaches v'doiches HaShabbos, and it overrides the Shabbos. My lav ketziro. Is this not referring to the harvesting of the Omer? We see that according to Rebbe, the harvesting of the Omer overrides the Shabbos.
What is the meaning, Rabbi? Valid. It's valid. You have to do on Shabbat, you have to do on Shabbat. Well, it's valid. You're doing wrong.
Where do you see it? Where do you see valid?
We just read. It's valid.
Niktzah bayom kosher. The Omer was harvested on the day of the 16th. It's kosher. Meaning that's the lenient opinion that says that even if it was harvested during the day, it's okay. V'doiches HaShabbos, and it overrides the Shabbos, even though you can push it to the daytime instead of, you shouldn't push it for the daytime, but if it wasn't harvested on the nighttime and you're going to do it on the daytime, it still overrides the Shabbos. Now, the Gemara says, Man shomat lo de'omer niktzah b'yom kosher. Who have you heard that said that the Omer was harvested on the day is valid, is kosher? Rabbi. V'ketoni. And the Mishnah teaches, v'doiches HaShabbos, and it still overrides the Shabbos, even though you can push it off, meaning that you didn't do it in the right time. You can still do it during the day. The proper time is to do it by night. If you didn't do it by night, you can still do it by day. Now, by doing it by day, it still overrides the Shabbos. Because the whole idea, because if I can come and say that if the grain was harvested, if the Omer was harvested by daytime, it's kosher, why should it override the Shabbos? That means that time is not important.
But we just learned that time is important.
It's a greater mitzvah to do it to do it in its proper
it's
time.
Okay, but it's not.
So, according to Rebbe, V'ketoni, Mishnah teaches v'doiches HaShabbos, it overrides the Shabbos, even though you can still bring it during the daytime. If you didn't do it at night, you can still bring it during the daytime. In other words, he's teaching you that to do the mitzvah in its proper time, it pushes off the Shabbos. Rabbi v'ketoni, yet the Mishnah teaches v'doiches HaShabbos, it overrides the Shabbos. Is this not referring to the harvesting of the Omer? We see that according to Rebbe, the harvesting of the Omer overrides the Shabbos. Loila Akrova, the Gemara answers no. The Mishnah means that we override the Shabbos for the offering of the Omer upon the altar. Aval ketzira lo, but for the harvesting of the Omer, we do not override the Shabbos. This is Rebbe's view. That to bring it on the altar, right, the komitz, would take a little bit of it and place it on the altar. He says this overrides the Shabbos, opinion of Rebbe. But the harvesting itself should not be done on Shabbos. V'atanyo Rabbi Eimer, Rebbe says, obviously Gemara is challenging it. When the Pasuk states, and Moshe declared the appointed times of Hashem to the children of Israel, Ma Talmud Leima, what is it teaching? Why must the Torah repeat what we already know? It does so because we have learned to override the laws of Shabbos and Tumah only with regards to Tomid and Pesach offering. Shenemar bohen b'moyadoi, regarding both, of which it stated in its appointed time. B'moyadoi, telling us it has to be done specifically in its time. V'afilu b'Shabbos, and it is appointed time even on the Shabbos. B'moyadoi v'afilu b'Tumah, and even in a state of Tumah. She'ar korbanos tzibur menayin, from where do we know that this applies to other communal offerings as well? Talmud loymar, eile tasu l'Hashem b'moyadeichem, This what you have to do. These shall you make for Hashem in your appointed times. From where do we know to include the Omer and that which is offered with it that needs to be done at its appointed time? The shtalechem and that which is offered with them. And Moshe declared the appointed times of Hashem to the children of Israel. Scripture established the term appointed time for all the offering listed in the passage. All communal offerings, including the Omer and the Shtei Alechem, are brought even on the Shabbos and even in a state of Tumah. The Gemara lays the groundwork for its challenge by analyzing the Braisa's teaching concerning the Omer. Lemay, with regard to what aspect the Omer service is the Braisa speaking, if you will say it speaks with regards to offering up the Omer on the altar, which cannot be performed before the Shabbos. This cannot be, for by presenting the cases of the Omer and the Shtei Alechem as parallel teaching, the Braisa implies that they are similar, Shtei Alechem and the Omer. The Gemara says, Shtei Alechem Menachot aninu. Are then the Shtei Alechem offered upon the altar? They are not offered upon the altar. So why are you comparing them? Shtei Alechem, the 2 loaves of bread that were brought on Shavuos, were not offered on the altar. Ela pshita letchino v'arkod. Rather, it is obvious that in the case of the Shtei Alechem, the Braisa speaks with regards to milling and sifting, both of which can be performed before the Shabbos. And the same is true in the parallel case of the Omer, that milling and sifting can be performed before the Shabbos. Leketziro, the Braisa speaks with regards to harvesting, which can be performed before the Shabbos. Vekadorches HaShabbos. Yet the Braisa rules that these labors override the Shabbos. We see that according to Rebbe, the harvesting of the Omer does in fact override the Shabbos.
So, Robert, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So why we don't blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur if it falls on Shabbos? We have the same halacha.
So first of all, Yom Kippur we do not blow the shofar at all, only at the end of Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah we do not blow the shofar for another reason. Is the reason mentioned in the Mishnah that we're concerned that people that are not learned are going to carry the shofar on Shabbat. Understand? They will carry the shofar on Shabbat, and therefore they'll do an avera. Chachamim wanted to.
It's not because the sound.
No, because you should. That's a mitzvah of the day. So the mitzvah should push off a mitzvah, right?
Even though here you carry the grain.
Yeah, over here we see also with a mitzvah that pushes off a mitzvah. The mitzvah of bringing korban, a korban tamid that was brought every day, pushed off the mitzvah of keeping the Shabbat, because it was done in the Beit HaMikdash. Now, there's another aspect to shofar, that whatever is accomplished through the shofar is accomplished on Shabbat. So if Pesach, if Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbat, we don't need the sound of the shofar. A great discussion about it, but in general, these are the 2 main reasons that we don't do it. One, that people shouldn't carry it till Tul, and number 2 is for the revelation that there is on Shabbat, the elevations of the world and the revelation. It's already there on Shabbat, and we don't need it. Like tefillin. Why don't we put tefillin on Shabbat? Because whatever we accomplish through tefillin, we already accomplish it on Shabbat.
Yeah.
It's been accomplished on Shabbat by itself. We don't need the tefillin to accomplish it.
So the Omer was very, very important.
Of course. Once a year. Ela Omer le'akava, rather than the when the Braita mentions the Omer, it speaks with regards to offering it up on the altar, since this action cannot be performed before the Shabbat, it overrides the Shabbat. U'shtei alechem le'afio, and when the Braita mentions the shtei alechem, it speaks with regard to baking them. V'kasova Rabbi Tanur Mekadesh. If a Rabbi holds that the oven in which the shtei alechem are baked sanctifies them. He ofilo me'etmoil, which means if they would bake the shtei alechem on the previous day, ipsilo loh belino, they would now on the Shabbos be disqualified under the invalidation of lina, because it went overnight. That's what lina means. Went to sleep, so to speak. It follows that the shtei alechem cannot be baked before the Shabbos, therefore the baking overrides the Shabbos. Once it's sanctified, it had to be dealt with right away. And if the oven sanctifies it, so you put the shtei alechem in the oven on the day before, let's say on Friday, and now it stayed the whole night. The fact that it stayed the whole night disqualifies it. Lina. Ipselo lo belino. They would now be disqualified under the invalidation of lina. The Braita speaks not of harvesting the omer, but of offering it up. It in no way contradicts the Gemara's assertion that according to Rebbe, the harvesting of the omer does not override the Shabbos. V'sova Rabbi Tanur Mekadesh, and does Rebbe hold that the oven sanctifies the shtei alechem v'atanyo? It has been taught in a Braita. Kivsei atzeres ein mekadshin es alechem ela b'shchita. The lambs of Shavuos do not sanctify the accompanying bread except through slaughtering. So once you slaughter the two lambs, that's what sanctifies the bread, not the oven. Keitzad, how so? Under what circumstances does the slaughter of the lambs sanctifies the bread? Shochatan lishman vezoak domun lishmon. If he slaughtered the lambs for their own sake and through their blood for their own sake, kodash halechem, the bread is sanctified. Shochatan sheloi lishmon vezoak domun sheloi lishmon. If he slaughtered them not for their own sake and through the blood not for their own sake, Loi kodash alechem, the bread is not sanctified. So we see that the lambs are linked to the two loaves. Shochatan lishman vezoak domun sheloi lishmon. But if he did one thing, which he did one thing right, he slaughtered them for their own sake, but he threw the blood not for its own sake, meaning not for the sake of the korban, for the offering. Halechem kadosh ve'ino kadosh. The bread is sanctified and not sanctified. Divrei Rebbe, these are the words of Rebbe. Rabbi Lozo, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Lozo, the son of Rabbi Shimon, says, Le'oilom eino kodesh. The bread is never sanctified at all. Ad she'ishchoit lishmon ve'izrok dom lishmon. Until he slaughters the lambs for their own sake and throws their blood for their own sake. Meaning you have to have it perfect. Both actions have to be done properly. In the Braita, Rebbe stated that the shtei alechem are sanctified through the slaughter of the lambs. They are not sanctified by being baked in the oven. Omar Nachman bar Yitzchak said, in fact, Rebbe holds that the bread becomes sanctified through being baked in the oven. As for the statement of this Braita, hukbeu velo hukbeu kama, the Braita actually said that the shtei alechem become established and the shtei alechem do not become established as the accompaniment to a particular pair of lambs. The Braita speaks not of the sanctification of the bread, but of its establishment as the accompaniment to a particular set of lambs. What makes it accompanying the offering is when the offering is shechted, and this designation of the two loaves are there, that makes it as one team, as they're coming together. Look at 23, it's a little long, but we read part of it. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak answers that the actual sanctification of the shtei alechem is affected by the oven in which the bread is baked. As the Gemara, as for the Braita, he amends it to read hukbeu in place of kodash. The Braita speaks of not of the sanctification of the shtei alechem, but of their connection to the lambs of Shavuos. That creates a connection that accompanying them. Once the bread is established as being joined with a particular pair of lambs, it cannot be brought with a different pair of lambs. For the bread and the lambs are now viewed as a single offering. The Baita tells us that according to Rebbe, this joining comes into effect with the slaughter of the lambs and the throwing of the blood. Let's stop over here. Hodon aloch, Rabbi Shmuel, we shall return to you, Rabbi Shmuel, and with this we're concluding chapter 6, and we'll continue tomorrow with Ve'elu Minchos.
So is the oven or the shchita? Or the throwing the blood?
It depends according to whom.
Okay.
But it seems over here that it's if you're using the word hukbiu instead of the word kodesh, hukbiu means that they were established as a pair, as the two coming together. These two lambs and these two loaves of bread are coming together for the korban. Not necessarily kadesh, that by shechting it, that makes it kadosh. No, he said by baking it, it makes it kadosh. So it depends.